Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Pain Points to Pipeline. We will get started in about 2 minutes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Pain Points to Pipeline. We're going to get started in a few minutes, just waiting for everyone to join. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pain Points to Pipeline. We're going to get started in 1 minute, just waiting for everybody to arrive. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to Pain Points to Pipeline, your CI/CD journey. We're ready to get started, so welcome. I just want to go through a few housekeeping rules just to start off. Just take note that the session will be recorded, and we will send it out afterwards. Everyone is on mute, but please feel free to ask questions in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So I would like to take a moment to introduce our first speaker. His name is Jesse Hurkens. He's currently the VP of DevOps Transformation at CloudOps, and he has specific expertise in team transformation management, DevOps integrations, technology product design, service development processes, software development team management, and many more aspects of service operations management. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks for that introduction, Casey. Very appreciate it and glad to be here with all of you. It's an outstanding opportunity to present here with CloudBees, and I'm excited to give you the opportunity to get some insights as to the DevOps transformations and also the CI/CD pipeline implementation, which Joe will cover later on. So without hesitation, we're going to go to the pain points to implementing a DevOps culture and pipeline. So to start out with, maybe a bit of background on CloudOps. So CloudOps is a Kubernetes certified service provider, and we give in a training partner, and it's one of 17 globally. Basically, we've been in the cloud business since 2007, and we're associated with the major cloud providers, being Google, Azure, and AWS. And we're also a private cloud partnership with Red Hat and OpenStack, and we're a community leader at Kubernetes and CNCF meetups, and we have also OpenStack and CNCF ambassadors, and we were founded in 2005 and really growing with a constellation of partners to help your business. So basically, the first question, which is what is DevOps? And I always start with that because sometimes there's some misconceptions. So basically, DevOps is a combination of cultural philosophies, practices, and tools that increase an organization's ability to deliver application and services business value at high velocity. So you end up with ability to evolve your products at a faster pace than using traditional development and infrastructure management processes. In the end, it's all about creating business value faster. If you can't achieve that in your DevOps initiative, well, it's not what DevOps was built for. It's really out there not just for a tech velocity, but most importantly for business. Also, misconception about Agile versus DevOps. So when we take a look at the overall pipeline, we start at the continuous exploration, which is the feature and/or product definition. This is where you improve your exploration capability, your collaboration, creation of your backlog. Basically, you're creating your services and features and being able to create them in small increments. Then you go up to the development start, which is to develop, build, test, and stage. This is your continuous integration. You're constantly developing with the best of tools. You're building. Most importantly, you're testing and staging. Again, you're still in the agile DevOps mode because, as you will see, DevOps spans the complete complete cycle, while agile most importantly is involved in the first 2.5 to 3. Then you go into continuous deployment, where you verify, monitor, and respond, meaning that you deploy your software, you monitor it for any issues, etc., and you respond quickly to fix. Ideally, you fix forward, and you want to do this as often as possible. And then you release on demand, which means you stabilize, measure, and learn from the behavior of your customers and from the behavior of the actual applications themselves. And you want to release when business needs it. So you deploy as often as possible at the cadence of your team, but you actually release to your customers when the business needs it and requires it. So that's very important because sometimes there's confusion between deploying and releasing. And it's important to make that difference because the two don't need to be on the same cadence, but your development team and your pipeline need to work on their own cadence and not be hampered by any release demands or issues. So what are the adoption challenges that we face? Well, there's many of them, but some common ones are buy-in from the business stakeholders is required for DevOps success. If you don't have the buy-in from the business, your DevOps initiative will be very difficult. So technical teams risk being led by technology instead of business value. So it's all about tech. It's all about having a fancy pipeline, and basically business is not important for the team. That's something to actually eliminate. Then you have teams lacking experience and looking for the right tools and practices. So you end up with teams which spend a lot of time on the right tools, and practices, but really lacking that experience, spending too much time there, not enough on actually doing the releasing and being able to put in that important cultures. And again, that's related. Technical teams are stuck reinventing the wheel, trying to get it right, which is sometimes a roadblock. And then there's the lack of qualified and motivated talent. So sometimes it requires a reskill and infusion of talent to be able to get over the DevOps hurdle. And of course, here there's always the eternal DevOps versus Ops, right? So you can call it Dev versus Ops, right? Where operations feels that they're picking up the mess of development, and it's overall it contributes to creating the wall between development and operations, and this is typically what we want to eliminate also in the cultural shift. In the end, it's all about attitude and trust. If you can't build this, your DevOps initiative will be very difficult to bring to an end, to a successful outcome. And we're going to talk a bit about that. So, and also it's important to mention that culture change is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like deploying a new tech or a pipeline. Changing a culture is long, and it requires lots of patience, and it requires the right ingredients. All DevOps journeys are different. The initial assessment is mandatory and must consider the history of the company. You know, you have to know where you're coming from to adapt and know where you want to go. There needs to be an ability and genuine desire to change. Some change because it's an objective that they put themselves, and it's only an objective. It has to be at the core of your values. And you need to phase the changes properly. If you don't phase the changes properly, you risk trying to go too fast, and in the end, you create lots of friction, and it will cause your DevOps initiative to fail. The selection of the team and our project is also super important, because if you don't have the right elements, that cultural change will just be even more difficult. You need the utmost executive sponsorship. We're going to talk a bit more about that a little later, because that is a key area where most of the time it falls apart. And you have to set up yourself for success, meaning creating yourself reasonable objectives and that you can achieve, and celebrate that with the team. The biggest challenge is rarely technical. I suggest you find the biggest cultural barrier and work on it relentlessly. So what are the main challenges? Well, definitely a challenge on innovation. You have building up of pressure from digital innovators and business imperatives, like there's more ideas today, there's more projects, there's new teams. You get pressure from the digital unicorns of this world that are, already, going at a fast pace. So you really need that ability to innovate faster. And then, you get the legacy drag pulling you down. Culture decisions making process that aren't aligned with the speed of innovation. You've got aging infrastructure, which we have to deal with. And then you get dated skills and practice, which is why it's important to know where you're coming from so that you can take this into consideration in your transformation. Obviously, there's culture challenges, right? You get the famous hierarchical versus flat empowered cultures. Teams and people that aren't project focused. You get the silos between the functions, and you get the famous us against them. And finally, probably the most threatening one is the command and control management, which makes it that people feel like they're minions on their projects or in the workplace. So those are all things. There's combinations of them, in worst cases, all of them, which need to be flushed out of an organization in order to have a successful DevOps initiative. And also you need, I mean, this is some of the more, I would say, lows of it, but you have to leverage your strength. No, you have to carefully analyze what you do best and leverage it, and then adapt your expectations and fix these cultural issues at the self-pace, which is achievable. Then there's the trust challenges. Can management really demonstrate trust at all times? Usually it's a challenge. You have the command and control culture, which is usually translated into a hierarchy of control, and encouraging. Usually you're going to see lots of people talking about failing, but in reality, are they really accepting it? Who do we blame? As you can see, sometimes it's the blame, right? Who did this? Why is it this way, etc. Instead of learning from it and accepting that was a learning experience, and how do we not do it again? And then complex processes kill any initiative. Yet, here we are, we're scrambling to put processes in place. I think they're necessary, but they can't be complex. The decision makers will not be able to navigate the high velocity tooling landscape. They need to rely on the DevOps team and partners. The reason why I mentioned that is too many times you get tools which are pushed down the chain, which are dictated by either legal or business or any type of teams there, which aren't really doing the job themselves. So you need to be able to, this needs to be a bottom-up initiative where the tools are decided by the team. And there's a compelling reason for that, is that if I just take the landscape in 2015, right? So this was kind of the major DevOps players out there. As you can see, there's still quite a few, but somewhat manageable. And then when I step up to 2018, and this is growing on a weekly basis, well, this is what it looks like. As you can see, it's split between collaboration tools, build tools, test tools, deploy, run. So there's no way that a management team can impose tools and select the right ones here, because there's probably 80% of the logos here which don't mean anything to somebody which is not in the know and working on this day in, day out. So you need the team to do the proper selection of the tools and do the necessary with them to make your DevOps initiative successful. So with all this said, where do I start? How do I make this happen? Well, first of all, there's a paradigm shift, and I call this here the paradigm shift. So for most organizations, you have what you are today. Cruise ship, difficult to orient, known processes, known things. It's going at its pace, and you're going to get there. You might not get there quickly, but you're going to get there. What people would like to be is on the right side. So how do I transform my big ship to a hydrofoil? And it's nowhere difficult, right? It's something that is really it requires quite a bit of culture change to get there. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing is the big ship will remain there. I mean, there's no sense in battling that right away and trying to change everything in it. First thing is try to get external help, because usually the decision makers, etc., will have a bigger ear for external help just because it comes from an unbiased body. Then you define a blueprint and pipeline, but then a smaller ship. You pick a project, and this is where you define your blueprint and pipeline for CI/CD. This is where you have a team with the right attitude. It's your first DevOps project, and you iterate quickly at it. It might take a bit of time, but at least with the small team which has the right attitude, then you can work this beside what I call the big ship, or the larger instances. But what's important here is while you do it outside of the governance of the big company, you need to have the executive sponsorship. That is super important. If you don't have that executive sponsorship, it's going to be very difficult to succeed, because what you have to do after is to be able to reintegrate this in the ship. You have to bring this back, and I'll talk a bit more about this a little later. So the first thing you want to do is have a project approach. You want to be in a position to federate teams around a common goal. Small scale, so it's easier to get executive sponsors. Usually, it will be difficult if you have this large scale thing which has huge impacts on the company. Well, it gets everybody a bit more nervous. So you try to select something that's important, but at the same time, in smaller scale. And it's an incubation approach. You have to accept that you're going to try stuff out. You're going to fail things. Some things will go great, but in the end, you're defining a blueprint, which will be not the generic DevOps blueprint, but one that takes portion of DevOps principles, but also portions of your own culture, and you make it more efficient, and you build your own pipeline, right? And this is a one-time chance to build a new culture. And then after that, it becomes easier to cross-pollinate to other projects and make that efficient. And then people will like working in this way. And it's nimble, and it's easier to protect the team from external elements, right? Because the team will get discouraged if there's too much red tape and too much of what I exposed previously impacting them. So don't impose the blueprint. It will appear from the team's ongoing practice, and it's going to take time. And let it time to really come up there, and don't try to impose it. And then once you've done that, well, then you can take those projects and reintegrate them, and then basically you have a bunch of projects or teams which are governed by the ship, but not necessarily tightly led. So it's governed, so you get kind of the best of both worlds, right? You get an overall structure and governance which is there, but each of the teams feels they have the flexibility and tools to do what they want and what they need to do and be efficient, right? And you bring them back in with a strong practice and which people feel that they have the overall ownership on. So then you create a larger practice, and you start new projects, and then you start building guilds of best practices and use these blueprints to really cross-pollinate the teams and make this a very efficient project and feature-making machine. So how do I know that I'm correctly engaged and I have the right reflexes? Well, I'd say the best thing is reaction to failure. That's when you get the best and the worst of an organization, right? Normally, you should no longer see managers that command and control. They should rely on the team, give them what they need to succeed. So let the team huddle, fix, give them what they need. Govern and guide, don't control. So that's super important. Treat failure as a learning experience at all levels. And make the team feel confident they are accountable, but you're in it with them. Even if you're the water boy, just giving them what they need, in the end, they're the ones which knows and have the best fix to go over the failure. So to me, I think every time there's a failure, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, and it's a test for the organization. And I think it should always be seen as such. And to me, the aftermath is kind of your report card. If you have the right mindset or not. And obviously the trust. Also if you have the trust, because it's probably the most important ingredient, and the overall initiative is to build the trust between the teams. And if your DevOps journey is going well, there's another way to know also is teams and people request to work in the new framework. And people come to you and say, oh, I'd like to work like the new projects are. And I'd like, this is really cool. And people will want to work in it by themselves. And as I say, who doesn't want to ride in a speedboat? But do they have the right attitude? So some people want to, but you have to be careful. Not everybody can. And then the team starts improving the processes and tooling on their own, which is super important. And you're going to see other stuff coming up like this. I mean, you're going to start seeing people, get more acquainted with technology, show it off, and you're going to start stickers seeing everywhere, and that's where you're going to start really seeing things fun happen. And that's when you're going in the right direction. It might take time, but once you start seeing these things, you're going well in your DevOps journey. And then, well, you have obviously our group of unicorns. Everybody works together, dev and ops. They work together as a seamless unit, and they help each other, which is super important. And and to take that first step, I think it's important to start with workshops and help. So this is something that that we do here, like Docker and Kubernetes workshops. Like there's a whole course and curriculum of DevOps transformation trainings that we provide, and Docker and Kubernetes workshops being one of them. And then join the community, join the meetups, join the Kubernetes, Cloud Native, OpenStack, Jenkins, Red Hat user group, be part of this. And it also gives a chance to exchange with the community, as the more you gather information, the more you exchange, the better you will be, and the more you're going to be able to adapt to your particular history and your particular needs, your DevOps initiative. And having said that, I'm going to pass it over back to Casey and to Joe for part 2 of this meeting.
Cool. So thank you so much, Jesse. That was really great, really insightful. I'd like to introduce Joe. He is the Senior Solutions Architect at CloudBees. He has experience in all things automation, from server, data center, cloud, to application lifecycle, and much, much more. He's passionate about the 4th generation automation technologies and how they bring tremendous value to customers seeking automation solutions. So I would like to introduce him, and I'm very excited to hear what he has to say. Go for it, Joe.
Hey, folks. Thank you, Casey, for introducing me. As Casey mentioned, my name is Joe Pugliati. Let me start the slideshow here. Just want to make sure you folks are able to see my screen.
Looks great.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, like I was saying, so my name is Joe Pugliati. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at CloudBees. I'm based out of Austin, Texas. And today I will talk about the common use cases in the CI/CD journey, the challenges faced, and how to resolve them using Jenkins, Kubernetes, and Jenkins X. This actually, in a way, will cover the solutions offered by CloudBees and the idea of accelerating CI/CD at scale with Kubernetes. Okay, I'm going to put together all these ideas and make this presentation in a little less than half an hour. I do have a lot of interesting stuff, so I want to get going with this. So in a sense, the agenda is who we are, what we do, use cases and challenges in a typical CI/CD journey, CloudBees Core, which is one of the offerings from CloudBees, where you will see that it's all about Kubernetes as a CI/CD engine, and CloudBees Core for Kubernetes continuous delivery. That's actually the enterprise version of Jenkins X. Okay, so firstly, who we are. We are CloudBees, and we are a company behind Jenkins. You will see that we are actually 70% of the open source Jenkins code commit is done by CloudBees engineers today. And if you look at this picture, this right here is our CTO. His name is Kozuke Kawaguchi. I'm not sure if my pointer movement is getting picked up, but the picture in the middle, the big hexagon there, that is Kozuke Kawaguchi, and he's actually the creator of Jenkins back when it was called Hudson. And as a company, CloudBees, we provide enterprise-grade Jenkins with proprietary software that's actually not free. So any features that we realize can be fully utilized by a team of, let's say, 3 to 5 developers, we provide those features for free. While at the same time, any features that can be utilized by an enterprise, like say Verizon or Chase Bank, we charge for them. That's pretty much our business structure, right? And what do we do? So we solve the problems enterprises face with CI/CD in terms of support, security, manageability, and scalability. So when it comes to support, CloudBees offers a single source of information and technical assistance when Jenkins teams run out of options. And for security, CloudBees solutions offer role-based access control as well as maintaining compliance and traceability and governance, right? And when it comes to manageability, CloudBees solutions offer complex pipeline and multiple user groups, projects, and Jenkins sprawl, operational and management analytics and visibility become critical to getting most out of the Jenkins, and we offer all of that. And then, of course, last but not the least, we offer scalability. That is, our solutions offer scalability because as usage spreads from individuals to teams to larger groups, scalability issues come up very quickly, and our solutions solve those issues. Now, let's take a quick look at the CloudBees suite of solutions. At the bottom, you can see that we have CloudBees Jenkins Masters offered as CI/CD engines. These provide for self-managed, flexible CI/CD engines on-prem or in the cloud. On top of it, we have CloudBees Core for unified software delivery and governance. This includes CloudBees Jenkins Operations Center, masters and agents spun up as pods in a Kubernetes cluster. At the top, we have CloudBees DevOptics, right, for software delivery metrics and value streams. This is something very unique. You wouldn't see that in the market today other than what CloudBees has to offer, right? And along the side, we have CloudBees support for Jenkins expertise and CI/CD acceleration. Right. Now, let's take a quick look at the common CI/CD use cases and challenges faced in the journey. Right. Open source Jenkins is actually the proven foundation for CI/CD. Thousands of organizations out there are using the Jenkins open source project to build pipelines, which is focused on integration, automation, orchestration of software delivery. Now, this leads to the clear definition of continuous integration. Continuous integration adds tremendous value in DevOps by allowing large teams of developers working on cross-technology components in multiple locations to deliver software in an agile manner, right? It also ensures that each team's work is continuously integrated with that of other development teams and then validated. While continuous delivery is actually the process of automating the deployment of the software to the testing, system testing, staging, and production environments. So essentially, you have millions of users and thousands of integrations happening with the open source Jenkins. But then these open source Jenkins has a lot of limitations. It comes with common challenges as well. And the key things that you will notice is Jenkins sprawl, lack of security, requirement for role-based access control, lack of support, need for high availability, and then you want to get away from overloaded instances, and you want to be able to monitor platform and measure performance, stability, and all these kinds of things, right? Now, so we notice the common anti-patterns scaling CI/CD. This is one of the things that I talked about before. This is where what are the common challenges that we see? We actually have worked with hundreds and if not thousands of our customers, and we have noticed these two patterns. The first one is a Jenkins monolith, and the second one is a Jenkins sprawl. In Jenkins monolith, we see that all teams share a single centralized Jenkins master, which typically runs on a maxed out server that is maxed out in terms of number of CPUs and amount of memory. you can't scale it up anymore. It is that tall with all the resources, up to the gill, right? This suffers from limited scalability, complexities in administration, and teams are slowed down due to configurability limits and conflicts. As a result, many of the development teams that want to move fast resort to shadow IT or an unpleasant, synonym, rogue IT, right? But in the at the same time, in the other pattern that we notice is the opposite of a monolith, which is actually a sprawl. In this Jenkins sprawl model, we see tens, even hundreds of Jenkins masters being used by teams. Each team member, that is, each developer, could be running a Jenkins master on their laptop because it's a Java-based automation server. So long as you have Java environment installed, configured, and up and running, you could just install Jenkins master and go for it. This leads to no standardization, no compliance, no governance, right? And this is where cloud-based solution comes in handy and solves this problem. And the solution is continuous scaling simply works. Cloud-based has this proprietary distributed pipeline architecture, or DPA, which eliminates pipeline instability, failure risks associated with concentrating all teams and pipelines on a single Jenkins master, right? So the DPA architecture eliminates project isolation. It also reduces pipeline workloads per master, increases granularity of pipeline execution, and it is scalable. The architecture is scalable, and it provides for data isolation. As a result, the risk of pipeline instability and failures is virtually eliminated. Okay, and how do we do this? With the cloud-based core product, which is flexible, which provides for flexible and governed continuous delivery, right? Now, let's take a look at the cloud-based core architecture. Right, cloud-based core makes Jenkins suitable for the enterprise by providing scalability, team flexibility, with compliance and security. With this product, you can actually successfully introduce multi-platform support, distributed pipeline architecture, and operations center for centralized management, right? You have straightforward, fast, and dynamic provisioning of Jenkins masters. So, we talk about, Jesse talked about paradigm shift, which I kind of like that. So I'm going to use that here. So our paradigm shift or ship here is the idea of don't worry about standing up Jenkins masters, configuring, and deploying them, because that can be done with our product in a matter of minutes. But be concerned with teams and applications. How many teams do you have? How many applications are they involved in the SDLC of? And how fast are your pipelines moving, right? And then, within the solution, you have efficient infrastructure. That is, the Jenkins agents are elastic and ephemeral, right? Use only the infrastructure that you need, and resources that are not required anymore will be returned to the group once a job completes. And then you also have the idea of high availability. We like to call that as resiliency, because using Kubernetes, we are able to bring up a Jenkins master automatically the moment it fails. Okay. All right. Now moving on to how this solution is deployed in Kubernetes. Before you can install the cloud-based core product, you need to have a Kubernetes cluster, right? That has to be created and configured with one Kubernetes master and multiple nodes, right? The ingress controller at the Kubernetes master needs to be configured as well. Now that's as simple as that. Once you have that ready, it is a straightforward process, takes you not more than 10 minutes to install the cloud-based core solution in this Kubernetes cluster. This solution includes, like I said before, an operations center, CloudBees Jenkins masters, CloudBees Jenkins agents, which both the latter two will be spun up on the Kubernetes nodes on demand. And we can enable auto-scaling. We'll look into that in a couple of minutes. The CloudBees Core product fully exploits all the features provided by Kubernetes in terms of resilience, auto-scaling, health checks, placement of pods, etc. Right? Now, let's take a look at Kubernetes as the CI/CD engine. When you use containers for microservices, you should be using Kubernetes to manage them. It's 2019. We know by now that the data center operating system war has been won, and the winner is Kubernetes, right? So you do have for container management systems, you do have Docker Swarm and Mesos, but the winner is Kubernetes. So everybody is moving towards Kubernetes, and we know that Kubernetes is an excellent platform for managing and running containers. And enter CloudBees, who are offering the Jenkins masters and the agents on containers. In fact, when we start talking about Kubernetes, these will be offered as Kubernetes pods, both these Jenkins masters and agents. All right. Now, in general, where did this journey begin? This actually began with Jenkins and containers. So before we take a deeper look at using Kubernetes as a CI/CD engine, let's take a look at this Jenkins and containers, right? I used to say Jenkins and Docker, but it is really about containers and managing those containers. Docker did and still does make certain aspects of that easy, and Kubernetes makes other relatively more complex aspects very easy, or at least easier than the good old VMs and Docker daemons, especially if you're going to be running Kubernetes in the cloud. Now, let's take a look at containers and Jenkins use cases. So you can easily run Jenkins with containers. That is, you can run the masters and agents as containers. You can use Jenkins to manage your SDLC. You can use Jenkins, to do end-to-end container orchestration. What do I mean by that? You can build Docker images with Jenkins, run security scans against these images, and then run containers with Jenkins for build, test, and deploy. Then, once you're happy with it, you can push these images to container registries with Jenkins, and now you're able to deploy container-based applications with Jenkins. Now, you might say that, look, we are not yet there. We are not deploying apps with containers. How will this be useful? You can always use the idea of containers for build and test. Actually, we know a lot of our customers do this. That is, for production, they are still running them on VMs, but the same stuff they're able to build and test, having them as containers. Now, you can run, like I said before, Jenkins masters with containers, right? You can get HA via Kubernetes scheduling with stateful sets and a persistent volume for the Jenkins home directory. You can use or extend existing Jenkins Docker images, right? Both OSS and CloudBees master images are available on Docker Hub. In fact, that's a good place for you to start if you want to kick the tires with Jenkins masters, CloudBees Jenkins masters. You have baked-in extension points which provide for easy customization. And by using Jenkins masters with containers, you can get easier and faster provisioning, right? Containers spin up fast and can make better utilization of underlying resources, and upgrades become really easy. That is, a Docker file, if you look at it, quite easily lend itself to be configuration as code. You can add and update plugins. You can add and update Jenkins configuration as well. Now, the other part of it is where you can run Jenkins agents with containers. It's extremely easy to manage, any tool, any Jenkins tool inside a container. Like for example, you could have a container with Maven 331 JDK 8 on it, and if your apps need that, you can use that container. Or you could have Maven 339 with JDK 9 on it for apps that are built with JDK 9. Or you can have custom agent Docker file right next to your Jenkins file. So in this situation, everything is coming together in terms of config as code. You could be using a Git server. You could put the Docker file along with the Jenkins file, and so now you're not only creating containers that will run the build jobs, you're also building the pipelines and storing them as Jenkins files in your Git server. Right. Now, moving on to when it comes to custom Docker images for Jenkins, we do see an anti-pattern, which is, some of our customers have tried this approach of a, kitchen sink approach, where they try to put all these tools, I mean, there's almost about 20, 30 of them listed here, in one Jenkins, one container, right? Which is actually definitely a major anti-pattern. So what we recommend doing is that understand what your Jenkins tools are and design them to be deployed on separate containers. Okay, so essentially what we're saying is that a container a day keeps the monolith away. So don't use monolithic custom images, but keep them separate, one per container, right? And we would recommend that you get out of the CI/CD tool management business because once you get into deploying more than one CI/CD tool into a container, it can quickly get to be a major mess. So you would want to let your teams manage their tools, use the same tools on dev laptops as in Jenkins CI/CD pipelines. Just about every tool imaginable is available out there in the Docker Hub official repositories. Now, one of the things that we also recommend is that for big enterprises, they might be quite wary of going to a public registry like the Docker Hub registry, in which case you can actually set up your own private registry, right? And you can have your engineers build their own images, that is, use Docker files from official images, and then manage custom Docker files in your source code repos. And then now you can use Jenkins to automate the process of building, scanning, and testing CI/CD container images. All right. Now I talked quite a bit about the Jenkins agents. We see that there are three basic kinds of container-based agents, right? One is the static Docker host, an agent that is running the Docker daemon. And the second one is Docker in Docker agents, that is a Docker container running a Docker daemon. Or the third one is Docker on Docker, which is actually a Docker container that maps the parent host Docker socket. So you could be running agents in any one of these ways, and all of these things are supported by the CloudBees core product. Right. Then there is actually another kind, which is the Kubernetes, pods. That is, you are able to run the Jenkins agents in containers as Kubernetes pods. Kubernetes pods are nothing but a collection of containers, right? It's actually a basic deployment unit. That's what a Kubernetes pod is, right? Now, let's take a quick look at the container orchestration for CI/CD with Kubernetes, right? How does that work out? Now, it's all about the pod, right? Pods provide for manageable containers, and it's an excellent platform for supporting dynamic ephemeral agents. So pods are super fast. Pods are one or more containers. And Kubernetes provides features that makes managing these containers easy. And pods are secure. Kubernetes provides for flexible and extensible mechanisms for securing your CI/CD environment. we'll talk about namespaces, which is used heavily when it comes to security in terms of separation of duties, right? And Kubernetes pods are scalable, whether it's for a more static on-prem environment or a dynamic cloud environment. Kubernetes makes it very easy to spin up agents up and down on demand, right? And you will see that Jenkins deployment on Kubernetes, the way we do it is we segregate Jenkins workloads with Kubernetes namespaces, right? So we have the concept of role-based access control, node groups, resource quotas, part security, and auto-scaling, which are all Kubernetes features that can be managed at the namespace level. In fact, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but when you get into Jenkins X, it uses the idea of Kubernetes namespace extensively, right, to actually create the concept of environments. We'll talk about that in a minute. But here, Kubernetes, along with the Jenkins Kubernetes plugin, it's actually a perfect platform to manage dynamic pool of agents that are created and destroyed on demand, right? And but we want to ensure that this dynamic agent workload does not negatively impact our Jenkins masters. So that's why we have this structure where using different namespaces, we are able to spin up agents in a separate section as opposed to masters. All right. Now, auto scaling Jenkins agents with Kubernetes. This will reduce slowdowns related to lack of infrastructure, right? When you have cloud only, right, you could have infrastructure being spun up for you on demand. True auto scaling will actually allow your CI/CD to move as fast as it needs to, greatly reducing slowdowns related to lack of infrastructure. The cluster autoscaler is a component of the Kubernetes autoscaler project and is supported by all the major cloud providers like the GCP, Azure, and AWS. And it's easy to deploy, and literally it's just a checkbox on GKE, right? So you have this idea of a master and node in Kubernetes. Okay, not to be confused with these masters. Here we're talking about Jenkins masters and agents, right? These are Kubernetes nodes, and with the separation of namespaces, you're able to say that in the Jenkins agent namespace, the agents will be stood up, and in the Jenkins master namespace, the masters will be stood up, right? In fact, if you want to look at the just-in-time auto-scaling, this is what it looks like. It will look like. So in the initial setup, you're going to have an agent node pool where it is using one agent, right, one node, and the moment this node is at full capacity, right, another node will be automatically stood up, and this is all done by Kubernetes, right? That is, scale up is being triggered by a request for another agent pod, right? And now that agent pod will be spun up in the new node that was created in terms of auto scaling, and Jenkins agents will be provisioned on the pods in those newly created nodes. And all these things are done with simple configuration, from right off the bat, so that you don't have to worry about it as things are getting used more and more. Right now, I want to get on to the last section, which is actually the CloudBees core for Kubernetes CD. This is actually CloudBees offering, which you can also call it as the enterprise grade Jenkins X. Okay. Now, working with customers, we have noticed the CI/CD trends in enterprises, right? We see that Kubernetes adoption is exploding. It's elastic, It automatically scales. It's self-healing. It's flexible. While at the same time, the software development trends are keeping up with it. Or maybe it's actually the other way around. Software development trends like lift and shift, move deploy applications to run on Kubernetes, move CI/CD workloads onto Kubernetes, and develop applications for Kubernetes. It's actually leading to the Kubernetes adoption, which is exploding. Now, with all this comes these pain points. It's difficult to develop software for Kubernetes. Because the complex tool chains requiring multiple integrations, and there is a steep learning curve. And most CI/CD tools are not cloud native, so they don't leverage the benefits offered by Kubernetes. And the ideal solution there is actually you need a CI/CD solution that is guided or streamlined to reduce complexity, that reduces the learning curve, which is totally cloud native. And that's what Jenkins X is offering, and CloudBees has a solution for it for the enterprises, right? So we call that the CloudBees core for Kubernetes CD, which is a streamlined solution, which is cloud native, which needs minimal learning curve. We'll see that in a minute, how we exploit the different features already offered by Jenkins X. And it is a commercial offering which leverages all the benefits of Jenkins X and includes all the packages of CloudBees of Jenkins X that's out there, and also it includes CloudBees support. Now, if you look at it, out of the box integrations of Jenkins X will be with the best of breed tools like Scaffold, Helm, Kubernetes. We don't have to mention that, Ksync, and then the chart museum. That's where the Helm charts are stored, and Docker, right? And so basically, there are no plugins you need to install in your Jenkins master, right? And it has a powerful CLI. JX is one of the most powerful CLI commands. The JX create cluster. You can use a cluster on any one of the the public clouds out there: GKE, AWS, AKS, and Pivotal, Red Hat's OpenShift, etc. Right? And it also comes with Jenkins X language packs. That is, if you have an application that is either Spring Boot based or Node.js based, you can actually say, let me take a look. No, we're not saying that here, but it's actually as simple as saying JX use any of the quick starts. They're called quick starts. Okay. Right, and this actually saves you a lot of time and money, and because developers can start immediately. And the environments, this I touched upon before. It's actually called as GitOps. It's a fancy word, but created by this company called Weaveworks, right? And what they do is they help you in creating environments and storing them in the GitHub. All right, so this enables stress-free rollbacks and version control, and this is completely auditable, right? And then this actually, with this idea of GitOps and Kubernetes namespaces, you're able to do promotions at will with a literally at the click of the mouse using our CloudBees core for Kubernetes CD product. All right, and this actually leads to serverless Jenkins as well. By the way, at CloudBees, if you go to our website, you can actually sign up for free trials for both the CloudBees core product and also for the Kubernetes CD solution. Okay, so I would highly recommend you folks try that because then at that point you will actually get to see the console that CloudBees provides for Jenkins X and how you can do drag and drop and do promotions. All right, and these are all the things that are included with CloudBees core. You're able to deploy applications to Kubernetes and non-Kubernetes platforms. Okay, to summarize, these are the things that we have. It's a supported CI/CD solution to rapidly create, deploy, and manage cloud-native solutions, and it offers a single pane of glass and built-in integrations with best-of-breed tools. Okay, with that, I would like to open up the floor here for any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Joe. We are running out of time, so I think we just have time for one question. We had someone ask during Jesse's presentation, so I guess it's for Jesse. How do you deal with security and policy for your team? For example, I had a similar situation that there was someone who should do the deployment, but not the DevOps way.
Right. I mean, that's a common problem with security. And what I didn't mention in my talk is what's commonly known as shift left for security, which is to kind of bring the security, because right now most of the time the security is an afterthought, right? Or it's kind of treated really at end the pipeline, but later. And we really want to bring it really at the inception of the development, where at the development stage, security is considered there, and it becomes automated. As much as we automate, testing, etc., security needs to be part of that and be part of the culture. And that usually starts by embedding your person in charge of security with the development team and build that trust. And that's how usually you can manage to do that. But it's called shift left, and it's a big trend presently.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse, for that. And thank you, Joe, as well, for the presentation. Thank you for everyone who attended. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Bye now.